Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into some pretty heavy stuff today.
Yeah, this one's
Really intense.
definitely a bit sobering.
We're looking at this report, the independent review panel's findings on what went down in Butler, Pennsylvania back in July.
Right, the attempted assassination of former President Trump.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's not just about that one incident, as awful as it was.
No, it goes way deeper.
This report really digs into the Secret Service, their whole operation.
How they work, where they messed up, what needs to change.
Big questions about how we keep people safe, especially those under protection.
Especially in this political climate, things are so tense.
And trust me, there are some shocking things in this report, stuff you wouldn't believe.
Things that should never have happened.
Absolutely. So let's set the scene for everyone.
Take us back to Butler.
July 13th, 2024. Think hot summer night, Butler Farm Showgrounds.
Trump rally, huge crowd.
Like 15,000 people, all there to hear him speak.
And then amidst all that, you have this 20-year-old, Thomas Crooks,
Yeah, this is the guy who...
ends up on the roof of the AGR building.
Which, by the way, just 150 yards from the stage. Clear line of sight.
Complex of buildings, but yeah, unobstructed view right to the stage.
And he opens fire.
8 rounds from a semi-automatic rifle.
Before a Secret Service counter-sniper takes him down.
Talk about a close call.
Seriously, it's chilling when you think about how easily this could have been so much worse.
It really is.
Tragically, one person, Corey Compertor, was killed,
And 10 others injured.
including former President Trump himself.
A near miss, but still a devastating outcome.
Absolutely. And this report really gets into the nitty-gritty of what went wrong.
What allowed this to happen?
What the Secret Service missed, what they should have done.
So let's get into it, shall we? What did they find?
Let's start with the big ones, the most glaring security failures.
Well, right off the bat, the AGR building, that's a major red flag.
Yeah, you'd think that would be
Priority number 1.
secure that building, right?
But no, the report says no one was assigned there,
No personnel on the roof, no one even watching the building.
despite, as we said, proximity to the stage, clear line of sight.
Seems like basic security protocol, right?
You would think so, wouldn't you?
So were there any attempts to, mitigate that risk?
Like barriers or something?
Yeah, anything to obstruct that view?
Nope, nothing.
No barriers, no vehicles, nothing in the report about any attempt to block that line of sight.
And at an outdoor event like this, you have to control those lines of sight.
Especially from high ground.
It's like Security 101,
Mind-boggling that they overlook something so basic.
and it doesn't stop there.
The report also talks about communication breakdowns.
Oh yeah, big time.
What went wrong there?
Well, the Secret Service and local law enforcement, they weren't on the same page at all.
So, like, different radio channels, different protocols.
Something like that, yeah. Information wasn't flowing.
Crucial information about crooks, maybe.
Could have made all the difference.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, right?
About those missed opportunities.
Absolutely. This report, it lays out all these moments where someone could have stopped this.
Before it even got to the rooftop?
Multiple officers had actually seen Crooks acting suspicious.
Wait, so they knew something was off?
The first sighting was as early as 4:26 p.m.
That's over 90 minutes before the shooting.
Plenty of time to intervene, but
But no one did anything. Why?
failure to connect the dots, plain and simple.
No one recognized him as a potential threat.
And this isn't just about information, it's about what you do with it.
You gotta analyze it, think critically, act proactively.
And that's where they fell short, big time.
And to make matters worse, the report mentions that their drone detection system was down.
The CUAS, yeah.
Counter Unmanned Aircraft System.
For those who don't speak acronym.
So Crooks was flying a drone for surveillance, and no one knew.
Undetected. Another missed opportunity to catch him.
Before it was too late.
Technology, it's a double-edged sword. Can help us, can also be used against us.
And in this case, it seems like the Secret Service wasn't prepared.
Not at all. But here's the thing.
What's that?
This report, it doesn't just point fingers at these specific failures.
It goes deeper.
Much deeper. It identifies what they call deeper concerns within the Secret Service itself.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting.
This is the systemic stuff, the cultural problems that allowed this to happen.
Like what? Give us an example.
Well, one thing that jumps out is the whole question of leadership.
Leadership.
Yeah, who was actually in charge of security on July 13th.
You're saying they don't know.
The report is pretty ambiguous on that point.
So no one was really calling the shot.
It seems that way, yeah.
Yeah.
And in a situation like this, that's a recipe for disaster.
You need someone at the helm.
Someone accountable, making decisions.
Right. Clear leadership, clear chain of command.
And the fact that that wasn't in place, Well, that's a major red flag.
It suggests a deeper problem, a systemic failure.
Absolutely. And we'll dig into those deeper issues in just a bit.
We'll be right back after a short break. Okay, so we've laid out the failures, those close calls, the systemic problems. But what about solutions? How do we fix this?
Well, luckily the panel doesn't just leave us hanging with all that doom and gloom.
They actually offer solutions.
A whole roadmap for reform, yeah.
Okay, I'm listening.
It tackles both the tactical stuff we talked about and the deeper cultural issues within the Secret Service.
So like a two-pronged approach.
Exactly. It's pretty extensive, but we'll break it down.
Sounds good. Let's start with communication, since that seemed like a major weak point in Butler.
Absolutely. They recommend overhauling those protocols completely, especially for these large events.
Makes sense. What did they suggest specifically?
What they call physically integrated communications.
What does that even mean?
Basically, everyone involved needs to be in the same room, literally.
Like no more separate command centers for each agency?
No more relying on outdated tech. No more confusion about who's saying what.
Everyone on the same page, the same wavelength.
Exactly. Secret Service, local PD, state police, even fire and EMS, if it's a big event.
All working together like a unified front.
Precisely. And on top of that, they want a real-time incident command system.
Oh, so like a digital dashboard
Where
where everyone can see what's happening in real time.
Exactly. You can track potential threats, personnel locations, all that.
That would have been helpful in Butler, seeing that guy on the roof early on.
No doubt. That kind of transparency and coordination is crucial.
Makes a lot of sense. Anything else on the tech side?
Yeah. They also call for mandatory overhead surveillance at all outdoor events.
So drones, helicopters, that kind of thing.
Basically, yeah. Get those eyes in the sky.
Give you a much wider view, right? You can spot things from above that you might miss on the ground.
Exactly. And it might even deter some bad actors just knowing they're being watched.
Good point. It's not just about reacting to threats, it's about preventing them in the first place.
Couldn't agree more. And speaking of prevention, the report also recommends this thing called a mandatory situation report.
Yeah.
Basically, as soon as the detail leader arrives on site, they get a full rundown of everything.
So before the protectee even gets out of the car.
Yep. Any potential issues, suspicious activity, it's all laid out for them right away.
So they can make informed decisions about security, how to proceed.
Exactly. Being proactive, thinking ahead, that's key.
That's a big shift from how things were done in Butler.
It is. But here's the thing. Technology and communication, those are just tools.
What's the bigger picture?
It's about the people using those tools and the mindset they bring to the job.
The human element.
Right. And that's where those deeper concerns come in. The lack of critical thinking, the leadership issues.
You mentioned those incident command principles earlier. How does the report address those?
Well, they really hammer home the importance of clear roles and responsibilities.
So everyone knows who's in charge, who's accountable.
Starting at the very top. No more ambiguity. No more assuming someone else is handling it.
So back to basics in a way.
Yeah, you could say that. Making sure everyone understands their role in the security plan.
And how do they propose to actually achieve that?
Well, training is a big part of it.
Training.
They want to major overhaul those programs with a strong focus on threat identification, risk assessment, that sort of thing.
To prevent those missed opportunities, like with crooks.
Exactly. They're recommending scenario-based training simulations.
Oh, so like real-world situations forcing agents to think on their feet.
Precisely. It's about building those instincts, making good decisions under pressure.
Learning how to connect the dots, analyze information, take action.
Exactly. And along with that, they want to foster a speak-up culture.
I remember you mentioned that before. What does that entail?
Basically, making it clear that everyone's voice matters, that you can raise concerns without fear.
Even if you're not 100% certain or you think it might be nothing.
Exactly. It's about encouraging that proactive communication, creating a safety net.
So potential threats don't slip through the cracks.
Right. And this is a big culture shift, moving away from that hierarchical top-down approach.
Towards something more collaborative where everyone feels empowered to contribute?
Exactly. And it's not just about communication. They also address the issue of experience.
Or lack thereof in some cases.
They recommend experience-based assignments, making sure the agent's skills match the task.
So someone fresh out of training wouldn't be put in charge of, say, securing the perimeter.
Right. And to make sure things are constantly improving, they want to create a continuous improvement and auditing center.
Sounds fancy. What is that exactly?
It's basically a team dedicated to evaluating procedures, finding weaknesses, making things better.
Like a built-in quality control system.
Exactly. Constantly learning, adapting, striving for excellence.
This is a lot to take in. It's starting to feel like a complete overhaul of the agency.
It is a pretty ambitious plan, I'll give them that.
And what about that do more with less mentality? Do they address that?
They do, and this is where things get even more interesting.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
The panel recommends that the Secret Service refocus on its core mission.
So dropping some of those other duties.
Potentially, yeah. They're especially skeptical about the investigative work.
The financial crime stuff.
That's right. They argue that those investigations might be spreading the agency too thin.
Pulling resources away from what they should be focusing on.
Exactly. Protection above all else.
So maybe that do more with less mentality is a result of them trying to do too much.
It's definitely a possibility worth considering.
If they can streamline their operations, focus on their strengths, maybe they'll have more resources to do their job properly.
It's about working smarter, not harder.
Exactly. And speaking of shaking things up, the panel also recommends a change in leadership.
Bringing in someone from outside the Secret Service.
Interesting. Why would they do that?
The idea is that someone who hasn't been steeped in the agency's culture might be able to see things more clearly.
A fresh perspective.
Exactly. Identify those blind spots. Challenge the old ways of doing things. Implement real change.
It's like hitting the reset button, bringing in someone with new ideas and the authority to make them happen.
Right. And they recommend this new director get to bring in their own leadership team, too.
So a complete top-down transformation.
That's the goal. Fresh blood, new energy, a real commitment to change.
Wow. It's a lot to process. It sounds like a massive undertaking.
It is, but the panel argues that these changes are essential if the Secret Service wants to truly learn from Butler.
To prevent something like this from happening again.
Exactly. It's a wake-up call, a chance to build a better, safer future.
And all this, it's not just about protecting one person or even a group of people.
It's about protecting our institutions, our democracy.
It's a bigger conversation about how we keep our leaders safe in a world where the threats are constantly evolving.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
But there's one more piece to this puzzle we haven't touched on yet.
What's that?
Former President Trump himself. This report had some very specific things to say about the challenges of protecting him.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting. So you're saying protecting Trump, it's not just a standard former president situation.
Right, the report makes that very clear.
What makes his case so unique?
Well, a couple things. I mean, first off, he's not just any former president.
Still a major figure.
Huge following, very vocal, and let's not forget.
The possibility of another run.
Exactly. That potential for him to jump back into the political arena, it changes the whole game.
Creates a whole different level of risk.
Absolutely. You can't just treat him like any other former president. The threats are different.
And it sounds like the report suggests that the Secret Service, they weren't quite prepared for that.
Yeah, they kind of got stuck in this mindset of former president equals X level of security.
Without really considering the specifics of this former president.
The nuances, the individual circumstances, the unique threats he faces.
It's like a one-size-fits-all approach.
Yeah.
And that clearly doesn't work here.
Nope. They need to be more adaptable, more tailored to the individual.
Thinking on their feet, basically.
And the report actually recommends a pretty big change in how they do those security assessments.
Oh, yeah. What did they suggest?
They're calling for a risk-based approach.
So not just based on someone's title, but on a whole range of factors.
Right. You got to look at their profile, their political activities, what's going on in the world.
The current threat environment, all that.
Exactly. And this ties back into what we were talking about earlier, the whole do more with less thing.
Right. If they can streamline their operations, free up some resources.
Then they'll have more manpower, more time to dedicate to these in-depth risk assessments.
It's all connected. You can't just slap a Band-Aid on the problem. You got to address the root causes.
And that's what this report is trying to do. It's not just about fixing the symptoms.
This is about a fundamental shift in how the Secret Service operates.
Becoming more proactive, more strategic, more adaptable.
And ultimately more effective at protecting the people they're supposed to protect.
That's the goal, right?
Absolutely. It's a tall order, but this report lays out a pretty clear path forward.
It's a roadmap for change, a chance to really learn from what happened in Butler and make sure it never happens again.
And this isn't just an internal Secret Service matter. It's something we all have a stake in.
It affects all of us because at the end of the day,
it's about protecting our democracy, our institutions.
It's about making sure that those who serve in public office, those who participate in our political process,
that they can do so safely without fear of violence.
That's what's at stake here. And that's why this conversation is so important.
Wall said. We've covered a lot in this deep dive. It's been a pretty intense journey.
Yeah, a lot to unpack.
But I think we've managed to shed some light on a really complex issue.
And hopefully spark some much-needed conversations.
Because this isn't something we can just ignore. We all have a responsibility to engage with this.
To think critically about the threats we face, the systems we have in place.
And how we can work together to create a safer, more secure future.
For everyone.
Couldn't agree more. So as we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought.
A call to action, perhaps.
Exactly. This report, it's a wake-up call, but it's also an opportunity.
An opportunity to learn, to grow, to change.
To build a better future. It's up to all of us to make sure we don't let this opportunity slip away.
Yeah.